Okay. So to recap, we started with the circle triangle on the title page. We looked at the three different parts of our illness and how there's a part of Alcoholics Anonymous that treats each part, and we bring our body to the fellowship for unity. And the bottom is recovery. We bring our mind to the steps for recovery. The steps are what treats my mind, and we take an awakened spirit out in the world and back into AA to be of service, and it's service that treats my spirit. And the circle means that I can be whole if I do these things in equal proportion. We use the doctor's opinion and pages 17 to the top of page 23 to look at how am I powerless over alcohol physically? What happens once I take a drink? And then we used Bill's story, the first half of it, we marked everything about that we could relate to about how Bill felt, thought, and drank. The second half of Bill's story, we marked everything that Bill did for recovery as a means to find out what it looks like to go to any length, to be willing to go to any length. And then we used from top of 23 through 43 to look at the middle part of alcoholism. What happens when I stop drinking? Why is it that I drink again? And do I suffer from this obsession of the mind, which occurs without any in my system at all? We use page 52 to look at unmanageability, the middle paragraph, and how I have the spiritual illness in my relationships and my emotional nature, misery, depression, fear, making a living, building a life, and those things. Then we began to look at step 2. And we're going to use we agnostics up to the ABCs, where it says we are now at step 3. Where we left off was on page 52, if that's correct. So we'll continue to turn statements into questions. On page 52, when we saw others solve their problem by a simple reliance on the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Do you doubt the power of God in your life?
Yes.
Have you seen it work with others? Have you seen people rely on the spirit of the universe and have that come to fruition? Our ideas didn't work, but the God idea did. Has that been your experience? The Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea of self-sufficiency would solve our problems. When others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who had insisted that the Wrights could never fly. Logic is great stuff. We like it. We still like it. It's not by chance that we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw a conclusion. Has that been your experience? Do you draw a conclusion based solely on the evidence of your senses? That's how I lived a big portion of my life. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence, we are at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it more sane and logical to believe than not believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said, we don't know. What a great statement. We don't know. That's where I want to try to get to. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we couldn't postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is either everything or else he is nothing. He either is, God either is or he isn't. What is your choice to be? Have you faced that? Have you been to that place where I need to make that choice? God is everything or God is nothing? If I make a choice here and say, for example, I say, well, okay, God is everything, that takes all the debate out of it. That brings belief and faith out of my head. Gets it out of my head. There's no, if God is everything and that's my choice, and it is a choice, it's a choice. Doesn't mean I can bring that to bear on my life at this time. But if I continue with these steps, then we'll see. But making this choice gets it out of my head. I don't have to debate on it anymore. And that's really important for me. Arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason towards the desired shore of faith. Bridge of reason is capitalized. You know, you can't build a bridge from the middle. You got to be on one side or the other. The outlines and the promise of a new land brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirit. Friendly hands stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason, capitalized, had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we didn't like to lose our support. So what are they saying there? That if I'm relying on reason, I'm relying on my mind, correct? That was natural, but let us think a little more closely. They say, okay, don't rely on thinking, now think a little closer. Without knowing it, have we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? For we not believe in our own reasoning, not capitalized? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, objectively faithful to the God of reason. So in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. Well, I've had faith in all kinds of things, especially in alcohol when it worked. You know, I saw it work in other people when I was young, and took a drink, and whammo, it worked. That's what gave me the faith. It wasn't that I just woke up one day and said, well, I think I'll try me some alcohol. I think that's what's going to work. That's what's going to make this fear go away. It's going to give me the ability to feel like I fit in a sense of unity and belonging. I didn't just wake up, and I had that experience when I took a drink and it was working. We found too that we had been worshipers. What a state of mental goose flesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshiped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? Yeah, I've worshiped all those things. And then, with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld a sunset, the sea, or a flower? Who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing. We saw it last. Were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? Do my feelings determine the course of my existence? Huh? No?
Some days they still do. I know how I feel is the most important thing. And so if I don't feel okay, then there's nothing that seems to be okay. Not all the time, but sometimes. more.
Can I think past my feeling? And they're talking about reason. And where do these sick emotions come from?
Place of lack. Place of lack. A place of lack.
Sick emotions generated by a sick spirit. A sick spirit is a sense of lack, a sense of need. My own experience is this. My feelings are the way I communicate with my subconscious or the God within. I can say one thing, think one thing, but this is the true way I'm communicating. It's communicated through feeling. So how do we get this faith, this belief out here into the world, into my life? It's got to have some sort of conduit. And what they're saying here is determining the course of my existence. They're saying it's going to come through this feeling, and it's going to determine my course. And this faith, this belief, this idea that I had, that I chose, is going to come out here and determine my direction. So what if I have a really shitty feeling?
False. Both of them, yes.
I do what?
False. Both of them, yes. The false.
Yeah. Can I sit in this chair and change the way I feel?
No, but I don't change the way I think so. Maybe you can change the way you feel. If you turn your attention away from yourself, that always makes me feel afraid because I believe underneath it all that I'm not enough. And if I can turn my thoughts and just kind of go, it seems to get better. And I hate to just like surrender. It seems too easy a word to say.
Surrender to what? That's really important. That's an important part. When for me, that's a really important part. What am I surrendering to? And we can say higher power, we can say God, but we already know we don't understand what that is. Innermost self, my insufficiency. What about surrendering to grace? Surrender to grace. Because this is really where, I mean, we're getting to a point here where I've got to admit, I don't understand this power. I've got, you know, if I've been through this book up to this point, and it doesn't matter how long I've been here, I don't understand this power sufficient to take me past where I am. And that's what we're trying to get to, because if I can get to that point, if I can get to that point where I can admit that I don't know, I don't know.
That's why I don't know is really sums up step 2.
It is, but I'm willing. I'm willing to believe that God could and would. I'm willing to believe that. And that's the cornerstone on our foundation, that willingness to believe. But these feelings and the ability to I won't say, you know, just completely change those feelings, but the ability to address those is really important. Because if I don't have that, man, it is going to determine the course of my existence. It's going to take me places I don't want to go. It's really a powerful thing. Feelings are not facts, but they're going to be. In fact, since I was Carl would always tell me that you know, you were going to be they talk about a shepherd and his sheep and how a good shepherd never loses one of his sheep. Well, he said, all these feelings and all these thoughts are your sheep and they will find you. They will find you. And you know, that's been my experience. I think that's a really good way to look at it. Um, it was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we'd been living by faith and little else. Imagine life without faith, where nothing left but pure reason. It wouldn't be life. But we believed in life. Of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense that you can prove a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, yet there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling to a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons themselves seemed more intelligent than that, at least the chemist said. At least so the chemist said. Hence, we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable. Though it emanate for our best minds, what about people who prove that man could never fly? So, you know, we're going to draw evidence from our senses, and they're talking about reason, and they're saying that's good. And I've got that's a great attribute of man, of mankind. But is there something beyond that? Is there something beyond a pros and cons list? It says, yet we had been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world, the world of reason. People who rose above their problems. They didn't wrestle them or solve them. They rose above them. They said God made these things possible and we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it wasn't so. Have you seen spiritual release in you and in others? Actually, we'd been fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as a feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us. Now there's some AA dogma. What do you think about that? If you were going to, you know, come to Alcoholics Anonymous and start out to hunt for God, where's the last place you'd look? Deep down within me. You know, for the most part, people don't argue a whole lot about the fact of whether there is a God or not. They argue about the identity of God. And we're going to sort of put all that aside and go with our choice, whether it is God is everything or God is nothing. We're just going to go with that choice. Says we can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony, the people that wrote this book's testimony, helps sweep away prejudice, enables me to think honestly, encourages me to search diligently within myself, then if I wish, I can join us on the broad highway. Why do they use the broad highway? Why did, huh?
Open and all inclusive.
No, but why did he use that specific term?
It's big enough for anyone.
Because in the 30s, it was the name of a book. With this attitude, you cannot fail. There's a great promise, a fantastic promise. With this attitude, they're telling me I cannot fail with this position. And then it gives me another great promise. It says the consciousness of my belief is sure to come to me. I don't have to chase it down the road like I've done for so many years. I don't have to look for it in a bottle. I don't have to look for it in people. It is to come to me with this attitude, with this position. You know, one of the things at a third step, I do this meditation that I was taught where I create a place within myself and I start out here with the place out here and I bring it inside myself. And I do that also. And I'd forgotten this till I was kind of reviewing in my mind yesterday. I'd kind of forgotten about Carl saying, give this power definition. Don't just assume this power is inside you. See it outside yourself and bring it in and give it and yourself the contrast of and definition. And that's really helpful. It's really helpful. Instead of just looking for God within me, I literally bring that power within me and into that place when I invite that power in. And we'll go through that meditation at the third step before we take the third step prayer. In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought an overdose of religious education. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble and frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. We had a guy go to the hospital today and talk to some people who had known a spiritual experience. And what a powerful experience that is. I mean, to be able to just transmit that, the fact that you show up and transmit it, super powerful. Lots of people in AA today because of that, because a person who had known a spiritual experience showed up. Didn't do anything special. They just showed up. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. What's the thought that crowds out all other thoughts? Yeah, this is a different kind of obsession. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with a certain majesty of great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in the conscious companionship with his Creator. You had that experience? Thus, our friend's cornerstone was fixed in place. What's the cornerstone? A willingness to believe. No later vicissitude has shaken it, or life's hurdles. His alcoholic problem was taken away that very night, years ago. It disappeared. Save for a few moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. In at such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would. God restored his sanity. You remember at the previous chapter, it said he would not drink even if he could, and now it's saying he could not drink even if he would. Is anybody interested in being placed in that position? Just raise your hand. If you're interested in what has happened to this guy, this experience that you could not drink even if you would, or you would not drink even if you could, to have that literally taken out of you. Is that something you're interested in? Keeping, yeah. How long's it been since you wanted to drink?
Like really, really want to run?
Yeah.
Picked up a glass with booze in it last summer at the pool, and it wasn't my drink. And when I put that down quick, that's not like me, not what I do.
That's a changed person from God, give me a drink, to God, I can't drink anymore, to please help me not to drink, to this. And I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous in this town alone is full of them, full of people who used to drink like I drank and they just don't anymore. And you know what? They don't run around trying to stay away from it or guarding against it or any of that stuff. They just go on and live their lives and do a few simple things, stay involved in the program, stay involved in what has happened to this guy, keep that alive, carry that message, and they don't have to fight it. They don't have to fight it. And what a blessing that is. And there's literally millions and millions of people worldwide that has happened for. And you'll see it sometimes just walking in here and the person never drinks again. Well, it's my case. I haven't had a drink since I took my first meeting. And that's damn sure that's not the way I am. That's not what I do.
I had my last drink after my first meeting.
You're a little harder headed. Yeah. That seemed impossible to me. Yes, I could understand them, struggling and white knuckling it for 20 god dang years, man. That was unfathomable for me. I couldn't see that because I thought that's what I was going to have to do. Because that's what I'd always had to do. I'd never been placed in a place where this guy's talking about with a spiritual experience. We got any addicts in here? Any of you addicts, Y'all want to take a shot today? So it's literally plucked out of you. It was taken away from you. It says, what was this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his maker, then he knew. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all who has honestly sought him. When we drew near him, he disclosed himself to us. How do I draw near him? By disclosing me to me. Through inventory, 5th step, 6th step, 7th step, 8th step, 9th step, 10, 11, 12, disclosing me to me. I don't need to disclose myself to God. This power already knows me.
Did it help somebody sacrificing yourself in service?
Yeah,
Service,
absolutely.
service?
Yeah, that's a part of me I didn't even know was there. You have to discover that. I have to discover that. Just like the part of me that's not drinking, I had to discover that. It's a shocking thing to meet that person. Okay, chapter 5, how it works. It says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Has that been your experience? So they're talking about, and you hear in Alcoholics Anonymous all the time, you know, the answers are in the book, the answers are in the book, the answers are in the book. Actually, the path is in the book. The path. The path is in the book. And if I follow the path, the answers come. They come through me. So those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to give myself to this simple program? Most days, some days not so much. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. What am I being dishonest with myself about if I'm not willing to give myself to this simple program? What is it that I'm being dishonest about? I'm being dishonest about my alcoholism and that it needs to be treated. I'm not being honest with myself about I'm not going to be able to fix this on my own. I'm not going to be able to think my way through it. I'm going to have to go down this path. I'm going to have to go to these meetings. I'm going to have to be involved in this program and give myself to it. When called to go to the hospital or a 12-step call or somebody walks through the door, you'll find your own way to serve in here. But even just sharing and showing up, I've got to find it. I've got to be a part of it. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. See, it's not even my fault that I don't want to be a part of it. Or as they say, happiness is knowing who to blame. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Can I develop a manner of living that demands honesty from me? Well, if I live in this manner, I'm going to face that every single morning and throughout the day. I'm going to face that. So it's going to demand that I be honest with myself to some degree. Just to the degree that I'm involved in this program, will it demand that I be honest with myself? So I don't have to just say, well, I'm going to straighten up, fly right, and start being honest. No, I'm going to live in a manner that'll ask me to be honest. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Do I have the capacity to be honest with myself about, yeah, alcohol, really about everything? Do I have the capacity? I have the capacity. I don't really have the ability, but I have the capacity. Well, the capacity means that it's in there. Start with the assumption that honesty is in me. I just got it covered up by all this calamity and all this stuff we just went through, you know. Truth is in me. If I seek truth, I seek God. Does that make sense? That's a principle. L-E. Truth is a principle. L-E. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. If you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. So the second half of Bill's story, if we marked everything, at this point, am I willing to go to any length? Am I willing to do what Bill did for recovery? Doesn't mean that I have the power to do it, but am I willing to do it? At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. What's an easier, softer way?
Jumping from step to step, because you don't want to do them.
Well, there's talking about an easier, softer way that worked. I haven't found one yet. This is the easier, softer way. It's a difficult thing to even watch people try the harder way or look for the easier way. Very often they have a lot of trouble.
Good. Now, God. Putting out, God. No, they're putting out, it's God. Putting out stuff? That's not, no. The field, the field now, field now, Maine. Alcoholic. I'm not, yeah, I have a fault, someone a phone. Yeah. I would say yes.
Yeah.
Bill knows.
Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. What are some of the old ideas that I've held on to that kept me drunk?
You don't understand, I'm different.
This time it'll be different.
This time it'll be different. What about, I don't want to go to a meeting today?
What's the use anyway?
What's the use anyway?
I'm too young to get sober.
What are the old ideas I could have today? All these years sober,
Oh, I surrendered.
I've done it. Been there, done that. That's an old idea that's got to go. It has to go. My old idea of a power greater than myself has to go. I have to be willing to let go of that. I have to be willing to let go of the idea that my alcoholism doesn't need to be treated today, or that there's a part of it that doesn't need to be, or that I don't need prayer and meditation, or I don't need to go help the other person, or that I can just live with anxiety from now on. I got to let go of that idea. That I can just live with fear. I can live with personal relationships that are all messed up, and my emotional nature is all over the place. This idea that I can live with that has to go. There are lots of old ideas, and some of them are new old ideas that I got here, like keep coming back. That's an old idea. Because pretty soon I'll think, well, I can just keep coming back. And that's not true. It's not true. I got a friend that's drinking. I don't know if they're going to make it back. So there's ideas that we get in here that, what are some of the ideas you've gotten in Alcoholics Anonymous that doesn't work? What about sticking with the winners?
Just don't drink. That's an idea that I got from Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's not,
Don't drink.
yeah, just don't drink. Well,
Through the drink. That's
or think, yeah.
like I know what's gonna happen. Thinking that I know how to sober someone up, like sign up for sponsor school and follow me. Send me your blah, blah, blah at 10 o'clock every night, and we'll call me for 30 days and all that shit. That's just a game that we play. We don't know that that's effective.
What about telling somebody if you'll just take the steps, you'll get sober? Well, I mean,
So only your experience is of value to me, not your opinion.
right.
Lewis says, I'm okay the way I am as long as I don't drink. That's not true.
That's not true. So we get these ideas in Alcoholics Anonymous too. We get them while we're sober. Old ideas have to continuously be let go of in my case, because I get an idea and it's so warped by the time it gets out here to you that it wasn't even the original old idea. I don't know, probably nobody's ever had that experience. I'm unique there, but have you ever had some warped ideas? Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is not Mark. That one is God. May you find him now. So it tells me where to seek power and how. Right there, where it's at, right now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Do you think you're powerless over alcohol? Physically and mentally? Yeah? Is your life unmanageable by you? Do I have to surrender to grace that can run my life? Came to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. Have I done that? Can a power greater than myself take me past where I currently am? Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, in my relationships, with fear, with my conduct. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. Why would I want to do that?
If you're not gonna get through the 4th step unless you do.
It's because of alcoholism.
That too.
That's why.
Recently, this page 24 squiggly writing stuff, that is the fact that I can't trust my mind that if I'm the only one, I can't trust my mind. That's how I drank again at 8 years. That's how I drank again after 4 years. It seemed seemed okay. Page 24 says, you don't have the power. And I didn't, I could surely get there again, yeah.
And if my mind is treated through the steps, is it a dangerous place?
No,
It becomes a tool that I can use, correct? Doesn't mean that it's the end all be all. Yeah.
no, it needs to be. As a result of going through this process of the program, we can have honesty. I can honestly see myself by doing all that and back to one. All that, go to sleep, all that again today, all that again tomorrow.
Yeah. I have a friend that says that's the hard part of life is it's every day. Yes, yes, I think that does lead us to honesty. And what is this honesty and humility they're talking about? It's really just being open. If I'm honest and have some degree of humility, I'm open. And that's what we're after. Because I'd kind of like to put God in a box where I got it all figured out. I know where he's taking me. I know the path we're going down. I know all of that. I'd like to have it like that because then I don't have to have any faith or trust. I don't have to, I don't have to wonder. That's not been my experience. And this says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, I think, after a while, you could probably, you've done this stuff. So, however, before the meeting, a guy with 47 years wants to do a fifth step tomorrow. So maybe you have to go ahead for a few more times. Maybe it's not just a once and done.
But there are some people who believe that
Yes.
if you do a thorough 10 or 10, 11, and 12 daily, that you don't have to go back and do a fourth and fifth step.
And I think they're right. If I could do that
I can't do that.
thorough enough, then probably I wouldn't. Because they're all in there. I'm just not that disciplined.
Me neither.
I don't think I've ever sat down to write inventory that I didn't have anything to write about. It's always something. Well, they let me down. They disappointed me. Whatever the hell I want to call it, is still a resentment. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, if you just read through these, they read it at my first meeting on how it works. What little I did understand about that, I won't say my first meeting, but my first week or two, that seemed impossible to me. Those steps seemed impossible. And the reason it seemed impossible is because it was. I'm supposed to get something from this admission of alcoholism, this admission of unmanageability, this looking at where I don't believe, my agnosticism. I want to look at that and become open. I'm supposed to get something from each one of those to go on to the next part. Being convinced we're at step 3. Are you convinced you're at step 3? Oh wait, no, we got a little more to do yet. Don't be convinced yet. What an order. I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints.
But what's the point?
The point is that we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. Am I willing to grow along spiritual lines? And what's that going to entail? What does it mean to grow along spiritual lines?
Honesty, willingness.
This program is the whole thing is spiritual lines. I mean, fellowship and unity and the steps and service and all of that stuff. That's spiritual lines.
It's pausing instead of smacking somebody. That's spiritual. Pausing, turning your thoughts to the power, saying, I'm not running the show, you're running the show.
Well, if you smacked them and they turned the other cheek, what would you do?
That one too.
I live with her. I live with her.
What's the difference between a defective character and a shortcoming?
I don't really see, I think, well, shortcomings are things that maybe I ought to do. There's not a whole lot of difference to me. A character defect is a lack, want, or need that is essential to my being complete. If I am complete, I'm not gonna have much of shortcomings or defects. They're not gonna come out.
So why do you think Bill made them two separate steps?
I'm not sure. Well, Chuck C says because he wanted to have 12,
Yeah.
because there were 12 disciples.
He says to humble myself.
About my alcoholism. I love that. I never heard
Said
that.
reality.
Well, if you think God lives in reality, where does reality exist? If you were going to contact God, where would you contact God?
In the present.
Right now. Where does reality happen?
But if God is everything, then he would be in the past, present, and future.
Can you contact him in the past? What takes me out of the now? What? Resentment, fear, conduct that I disagree with, remorse, anxiety. What is the opposite of faith? Anxiety.
Which is fear.
If I'm anxious, I'm short on faith. If I have faith, I have less anxious. I'm less anxious. Can I live with anxiety?
Well, not very well.
Can I live, is it bring on anxiety, this not understanding this power? Does it make me anxious?
And
Understand it, I think seeking, because how can we understand the power? I just need to try and plug in, and then that seems to be sufficient. My brain's too small.
Seeking this power. So I'm trying to understand this power to a degree, even though the step 11, tells me, seek his will, give me the power to carry it out. There's got to be some degree of understanding there. Step 10 says I'm supposed to grow in effectiveness and understanding. Understanding and effectiveness, I think is what it says actually.
You know, when you start acknowledging that you're being prodded or spoken to or directed by the power, and, and then you just listen for it, and when you hear it, you say a quiet thank you and take the direction, right? Like, okay, all right, I'm going that way, I'm turning this, okay.
Can I live with mystery, the mystery of God? Alcoholic wants to know, man. Well, you don't have to. That's going to be a rocky road, my experience. Can I actually enjoy the mystery? You know, it said earlier, Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. The mystery is in the middle.
It's the mystery, the broad highway.
Boy, it could be. Or spirit of the universe. Or that's not really how I want to operate. I want to know everything so I can figure this out, so I don't have to have faith. Faith literally means that I don't know. I don't know. That I have to rely on the unknown, rely on grace. Anyways, are we convinced we're at step 3? Do you think we've been thorough through this book, through this process up to this point? Or is there something we've missed? It's what they're asking. Being convinced we're at step 3.
Being convinced of this ABC.
Yeah.
You know, in the original text, the A was that I am alcoholic and cannot manage my own life, drunk or sober. And then they changed it. And the first time that I read the original one, it had a different effect on me than the one that we read now.
Let's move on. Can you claim spiritual progress rather than perfection? Have you made spiritual progress? Yeah. All right. Our description of the alcoholic, where do we find that? In We Agnostics, more about alcoholism and those other chapters. Right? The chapter to the agnostic, we agnostics, our personal adventures before and after means that I need to bring my experience to this book, my personal experience to it, make clear 3 pertinent ideas. Before and after what?
Spiritual experience.
Could be. Before and after what else? She said it earlier, before the first drink and after the first drink. Are these 3 ABCs clear? That I'm alcoholic and can't manage my own life, drunk or sober, before the first drink or after the first drink. That before the first drink or after the first drink, no human power can relieve my alcoholism. Before the first drink or after the first drink, that God could and would if he were sought. That makes sense? Now we can go back to where I've been trying to get to for the last 30 minutes. Are we at step 3? Do you think we've been thorough through this process up to this point? Have we missed anything, do you think? Because you're going to read this maybe 2 weeks from now or 6 months from now, and you're going to go, well, that's kind of new. Or you have changed and you're looking at it from a different place. Was the other day we were talking about having a different point of view. If I'm looking at this book and reading it from a different place, it's going to mean something different. Which is, we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Are you willing to do that? Have you decided that that's what you want to do? And why would you want to do that? Huh? Is it because of alcoholism? Do I need this realization of alcoholism in order to do this effectively? Or can I do it based on an unmanageable life and have it be effective?
Based off an unmanageable life.
Huh?
You can do it based off of having an unmanageable life, even if you weren't alcoholic.
I have never been able to finish it based on that, and I've tried. I mean, maybe there's people that can. I'm not saying you can't. But for me, it has to be tied to that alcoholism, and I need to see where that can take me right back to the bottle.
Like, if it were just turning your will and your life over to God, wouldn't that just be from a religious standpoint and not, I mean, that is possible, right?
Oh, it's possible. Absolutely.
So, just a question here. This thing's all about how we're working with people. When we get a person in this part, and he is just totally against anything that has to, he doesn't believe in any religious power or anything like that, and he's an atheist, what would you do at this point where if he chose his higher power and it's no higher power at all, how would you approach it?
You know, if he doesn't have a power greater than himself, he's not gonna, there's no sense in going forward. Why would you? He would need to find maybe another path, because we need a power. If I'm powerless, take him back to the first part. Take him back to the first half of the first step. Because if I cannot live a spiritual life based on my power. I mean, God, I wish it worked. I wish it would. I really do. I'd be so much further along. Spiritual life always has to come from powerlessness. And if I have powerlessness, then I've got to find a power greater than myself that can and will. There's no point in going on if I'm going to be my own higher power.
Some people saying here that just let the group into a higher power.
Well, yes, and I think that's a place to start.
Group of drugs, yeah.
But it's also not inside me. And if I really want the goods that this place has to offer, that Alcoholics Anonymous and this process has to offer, I need to look deep down within myself fearlessly for that power. And Carl said, hey, you know, your power greater than yourself can be anything you want. It can be a redwood tree. It could be a doorknob. It could be a chair, as long as you put it inside you.
What if I'm not willing to believe in a doorknob or a redwood tree? Like, that's all resistance, so I understand your point. The
Yeah.
point going forward is.
Well, then go on with your alcoholism, and we'll see you when you do become willing.
Is it advantageous to just ask, what do you believe in?
Of course.
The sports car, you believe that fuel makes that run, you believe that anything. What it's offered.
I've got to get this person to understand powerlessness. Either he is or he isn't. If he's not powerless, then he don't need to do the shit I do. You know? He can go over there to church or do whatever he wants to do, you know. He can find a spiritual way of life. I'm not like that. But I want to go and I want to make sure whether or not he is powerless over alcohol or drugs or whatever it is he's powerless over, you know? That's the key. Because without that, every single step, and that's why I ask, why would I want to turn my will and my life over to the power greater than myself? Why would I want to do that? It's because of the first half of the first step. That's why. Do you think I could drink after 33 years? I know I could. I know I could. I know it. All I have to do is nothing. Just do nothing. It's just a matter of time, and it's going to be a shitty trip. You think I just come to meetings and do things because it's a great thing to do? No, 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 that's not what's going on in me. No, I'm here tonight because it treats alcoholism. That's why I'm here. I have alcoholism. I have a mental illness that this is treating. This is how it gets treated. For me, I'm not saying for other people. I'm not saying, you know, my neighbor over there that they can't treat that in some other way. I'm not saying that at all. But if I'm taking somebody through this process, then I need to be convinced and they need to be convinced of the first half of first step one. You know, because an unmanageable life, you know what will happen is I'll be going through this and my life will get a little better and I'll think it's manageable. So why would you go on if you got this, if you got it going on, why go further? I have yet to be able to finish this based on an unmanageable life. That's why I need to touch alcoholism, and every step needs to take me deeper into it. Every tradition takes me deeper into unity. Every concept takes me deeper into service. Does that make sense? So the reason for me to be convinced that I'm at step 3 and be willing to turn my will and my life over to God, or as I understand him or misunderstand him, my willingness to do that is based on the fact that up to this point, there's really no place else to go. If there is, I'll be going there. And if there's another place to go, I probably haven't done I haven't been thorough up to this point. The first requirement is that I be convinced that my life run on my will can hardly be a success. So there's only one requirement for being a member, but there's some other requirements to participate in recovery. And this is one of them. This is a requirement. Do I think I can run my life on my will? What happens if I do that?
The sanity of the alcoholism comes back.
That
Higher chance of relapse,
What?
higher chance of, greater chance of relapse.
That's why you're saying turn the statements into questions, so I can ask myself, what's your experience, Sherry? Is this you? Do you have this?
I was told that the vicious cycle that's in the doctor's opinion it never says that it starts like that. It starts with the first drink. It could start with the mental upset.
Yeah. Or it could start way back before I even realized it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it can start way before the first drink. It never says it starts with the first drink.
And, you know, breathing is a trigger. Sometimes I do that when I'm asleep and I don't even know it.
Have someone else breathe in the same air you're breathing.
That's right. That's right. But this self-will part, you know, and me trying to be a success, you know, alcoholics are the ones I know are really out there trying to make it happen most of the time. And what they're saying is, that's probably not gonna work. It's really never worked for me. I've never been a really make it happen kind of guy. Anything I have today, trust me, it was a gift. It was a damn gift. If I'd have had my way, I'd have been way over here somewhere. Way over here. Now, I don't even know where over here is, but it wouldn't be here. On that basis, go what?
You say this is the first requirement, is step 3? Is that what you said? You
Yes.
said the first requirement,
The first requirement is that I be convinced that my life run on my will can hardly be a success.
You said the first requirement for recovery, right?
Yeah, recovery.
Like their only
Well, I
requirement for
wouldn't, no,
membership.
there's, I think there's other requirements earlier. I think it's even actually uses the word requirement. I might look that up. Seems like there was, the only requirement to be a member. Yeah. There's only one requirement to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. There are other requirements to be a participant in recovery.
The first step, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost self that I am an alcoholic. That's the first step in my recovery. The delusion that I'm like other people or ever will be has to be smashed. I can't drink. I can't drink.
Or,
I can't call a number.
or does it say, I will drink?
Yeah, I will drink.
That's a whole different connotation. You know, I kind of think step one means, you know, I can't drink, I can't drink, I can't drink. And Carl says, no, it doesn't say that. It says you will drink, no matter what. No matter what. If this thing doesn't happen to me, to make that, if it's not plucked out of me, if I'm not struck sober, if I'm not struck sober or grow spiritually, then I'm destined to drink.
But the fact is, how can a drunk like you or a drunk like her, 20 years no drink, 30 years no drink, 5 years no drink, how can that even happen? Because you're still doing what you did when you got here, and that's why you haven't had to drink again. Because I drank at 4 years, and then I got sober again, and I drank at 8 years, and now I'm back at 5. And I think if I'll do what the two of you are telling me you did, I won't have to drink anymore.
Yeah.
I think I have to do more today than I did when I first came in. It's different stuff, but it's more in depth and more honesty, like uncomfortable honesty.
I never heard you say before, I have to be honest about what my alcoholism is.
Oh, yeah. That's all this is about. If I don't have that, I'm probably not going to do it. And I'll go into service, and eventually I get to a place where I can't go fast enough. I just can't go fast enough. That's the feeling I have when I know that I'm running on service alone. I'm trying to just do this based on service, not on recovery and fellowship.
Or you'll go and you'll talk to someone and you know, get that feeling of feeling great. And then like 5 minutes after that's done, you're sinking back down to where you were before you went in to talk to. It's doing, and I've done this with service work. It's like taking a hit.
We're trying to get
Right.
full on Doritos,
Mm-hmm.
not sustaining.
Or what about this idea, trying to live from one spiritual experience to the next? To hell with everything in between. Yeah. Yeah.
A dog chasing its tail.
Well, on this basis of self-will, I'm almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though my motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion, self-power. You try to live by self-power, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, put some dirt on that alley and go on, or whatever the hell it is you're supposed to be doing here. Self-power, self-power. after all this time, I can assure you, for me, self-power is a delusion. Any self-power is a delusion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Or you could do it this way. Mark is like the actor who wants to run the whole show. Mark is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in Mark's own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as Mark wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, Mark may sometimes be quite virtuous. Mark may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, Mark is likely to have varied traits. What's the problem? The longer I'm sober, the more subtle these things get, the harder they are to find. The smarter I get, the smarter they get. What usually happens, the show doesn't come off very well. Mark begins to think life doesn't treat him right. Mark decides to exert himself more. Mark becomes, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play doesn't suit Mark. Mark admitting he may be somewhat at fault, Mark is sure that others are more to blame. Mark becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker when trying to be kind? Is he not the victim of the delusion that he can wrest, W-R-E-S-T, satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only he manages well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? And do not Mark's actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is Mark not, even in his best moments, the producer of confusion rather than harmony? So they just took me through from 33 years to drunk. That's how I get there. That's how I can get to a place where drinking I'm in real danger. Mark is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. Mark is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation or the sad state of AA. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are all who would be a utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? Am I concerned with myself, my resentments, my self-pity, my fear? I mean, is that the case? I mean, I need to ask myself that question. Is that what I'm really concerned with? Am I really concerned just about me? Am I concerned about others and their well-being? I think earlier it said something about, for the ex-problem drinker, my very life depends on the constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. They're saying my life depends on it. And if I don't do it, I wind up here. And then it talks about the root of my trouble. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of my trouble. So we started with the mind. They say the main problem centers in my, the body, the main problem centers in my mind. And then what was the other one? They called it something else. I can't remember what it was. You remember? From the main problem, the crux of the problem is in my thinking preceding a drink, And now they're saying that the root is spiritual or selfishness and self-centeredness. And I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Does that describe me? I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. Is that what's going on in my life today? Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that sometime in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Does anybody relate to that?
It was the very first thing I ever read in the big book.
Oh, yeah?
It was the very first thing I ever read in the big book. I found a big book and just opened it up, and that's what it opened up to. This part where it says selfishness and self-centeredness, and I remember reading the part about how we step on the toes of our fellows, and there was this like little spark that went off inside.
Yeah, I was about to ask, if that feels spiritual?
It did. I was drawn to it. I wanted to know more about it. What is this book? I didn't know anything about AA, nothing, but it was still years before I got sober.
But you remember it.
I do remember it. I remember that feeling of like, this means something to me.
So selfishness, self-centeredness, is that how the spiritual illness comes out? What does it mean to be selfish and self-centered?
I'll care about how I feel.
Huh? If I'm self-centered, that means I see everything through whatever's going on here. And if I'm full of fear and full of resentment, I look at life and the world through a lens of fear and a lens of resentment and a lens of behavior.
What does it say? I don't see you how you are, I see you how I am. Eat water.
Yeah,
Taking a swing at this principled life, spiritual principles, all that. I mean, anybody in here really want to drink? I haven't wanted to drink in a long time. I like what I'm getting.
so why would we keep seeking this spiritual understanding? Why would we? Why would we not just say, well, this is enough?
Because it's not. Because the disease of alcoholism progresses whether I drink or not. So my spiritual program has to progress as well.
Can I think through my spiritual growth like I think through a drink?
Mhm.
That's kind of what you said. What's that? Something when you were spiritual.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's experiential.
Can I self-will it? Can I make myself grow spiritually? This has been my experience, having been touched by whatever spirit it is that touches alcoholics. I'm driven by something completely different than 100 forms of fear, self-delusion. I don't know anybody that stayed sober and been happy that didn't seek, that weren't driven to seek, literally. And like that thought that crowded out all else, that obsession, whether it's sitting under a tree smoking a cigarette, which I used to do all the time, and contemplating, that contemplation, that spiritual quietness. You know, it doesn't always have to be some deep book or something like that. It can just be being quiet and seeking this spiritual growth in that way. But the people that I know that are happy in Alcoholics Anonymous are seekers. They are seekers. And we seek spiritual growth.
You know, if I don't see you how you are, I see you how I am. So if I'm full of fear, and I look at you, I can make any kind of story up about who you are based on what I really is going on inside.
Can't see outside my own experience.
I project my own insecurities.
Well, can you imagine looking, I mean, if I am completely full of fear and self-deluded and resentment, can you get an idea of how I see the world? How would I see it any different? Because especially if I'm self-centered, which these things force me to be. So I'm looking at everything from my center through these filters of this shitty outlook, and that's how I see everything.
Right? Have two colors, that's all you can see. That's the tool that you
So what changes if I go through this process? Do you change?
in 13, it still the epiphany part where he says, I humbly offered myself to God, as I then understood it, to do with me as you would, and I placed myself under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, and that without him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend, capital F, take them away root and branch, and I haven't had a drink since. He died sober 30 years or so later. I love page 13.
Does your conception of the world change when you do this? Why?
Because it's okay. Because right here, right now, it's okay. I got work to do. I'll just focus on it.
What is the main thing? Remember the point of view thing? When I see myself different, I see the world different. My experience in the world is going to be based on how I see myself. If I see myself as as I think the Bible says, a grasshopper, all y'all look like giants. So the thing that's going to change, one of the main things that changes is how I see myself. Because how I see myself is going to determine how I participate. So what is how I see myself? What do they call that in here? Ego. Ego. So does it stand to reason that if my ego is weak, I'm constantly being threatened? If my ego is strong, I know who and what I am. If it's strong and accurate, does this strengthen my ego? Because we always kind of have this idea in AA, oh, you got to get rid of the ego, get rid of the ego. No, strengthen it. Strengthen it. I know for a fact I am God's kid. I know that. I didn't draw that from out of my head. It's not a mind-made sense of self. That's a fact-based experience.
That's why
Step 4, 5, 6, 7, because all of these are investigating who and what I am and getting rid of. And a transformation means to get rid of the old, not just change, which means something new. We don't need anything. All that I need is already in there. It's already in there. It's in you too. It's there. We just got to uncover it. Huh?
I'm tired.
In entirely. Yeah, I think so.
All at once?
Or just have it ripped out. Uh,